Good morning. So we are supposed to have really nasty storms today. So I am trying to get out here and get back to work on this chicken coop while it's not storming, which is going to be soon. So I just got done cutting the, I know it's really hard to see on camera. I just got done cutting through the opening of the chicken wire for the door. And I'm just very quickly bending back the wire pieces that are sticking out so that I don't cut myself on it when I go through the door. You just kind of take those raw edges and fold them back. And then I'm going to go ahead and work on closing in the other side. I actually cannot remember where I left off with the filming. When I was working on this the other day. I don't know if I showed this to you guys. So we had this old door out behind the workshop, and it had a doggy door cut in it. And so I went ahead and I attached it to the side right there. I'm filling in both sides with some chicken wire, and then because there was already a doggy door down there, and because it kind of reduced the size of the chicken door a little bit, I went ahead and I moved this piece that was down here up to the top. And these things are not necessary. However, I find, putting in some little corner braces just helps reinforce everything. You can make those out of scraps. It's not a big deal. I also put them down there. You can see right there and right there. I put them in each corner. Lots of questions about how big this was. So lengthwise, they're full length boards at 8 foot. And then crosswise, it's 7 foot. So 7 feet wide, 8 feet long, which gives you a little bit of overlap with the cattle panels where the two connect to help, make them stable. And then it also, by making it only 7 feet wide, it makes it tall enough that I can easily walk in here without hitting my head. Now, I'm 5'4", and there's a good, maybe a foot or so above my head. And so Mr. Smith would be able to walk in here down the middle too without hitting his head, because he's a little taller than me. But yeah, so I just got done doing this opening. Down here on the bottom, you can see I've got an apron of the chicken wire coming out. This will be covered up with rocks to discourage anything from trying to dig up underneath there. Okay, so this can just stay like that because chickens aren't going to be up here. Next, canvases. Let me go grab those out of the truck. So this door is on the western side of the coop. So it'll provide shade in sunny weather. This one's going to be a challenge. It'll provide shade in sunny weather. Well, I think we're just going to have to hook it right there. Well, I'm not going to be able to get one of these clips in that space, so I'm just going to have to zip tie the top one. I'll probably come back later. I can't get the hog clip in there, but I could probably get some wire. Well, I know I can. I'll come back with some, just some wire and reinforce that since I can't get the little hog clip tool through there. Actually, maybe I can now that I put that zip tie there. All right, so Mr. Smith called while I was on the phone with him. After I put the zip tie on there and it kind of pinched everything together, I was able to get one of those metal hog clips on there. So I used the hog clips to attach the canvases to the cattle panel, which is, you know, basically the frame of this chicken coop. And on the outside where I have a little bit of an overlap, I can't put hog panels here or it'll puncture the canvas. I don't want to do that because the whole point of this, of course, is to keep rain out and all of that. So what I'm going to do on the outside is I'm going to take some 550 cord, which is that heavy, well, it's not heavy, but it's very strong cording, and I'm going to tie it here, run it down to the bottom, and then kind of basically zigzag it between the 3 grommets on the outside. Then I'll just finish that part later on. That's not structural, that's not going to impede anything else to be done. So I figured I'll probably get some questions about these canvases. This is the kind that I use. Came from Tractor Supply. They are a little pricey. They cost more than your poly type of tarp. I keep wanting to say tarp. They cost a little more than a regular tarp, but they last way longer. We have a structure kind of like this that we had built for the bucks, bucklings when we got them, and it has been out there in the elements this whole time. It is still in great condition. It's not, the only part where it's damaged is on the back. We had put another smaller one on the back side of it, and the bucks would play with it because they're bucks, they're goats, and they kind of tore up one of the grommets, but that's from them. The whole rest of it is still structurally sound, still keeps out rain and wind, sun, all of that. So, you know, even the UV resistant poly types of tarps, I have not had them last more than, I think the longest I had one last was 2 years, and I wish I could remember what brand it was because it lasted longer than any others, but of course I don't remember what brand it was. But every other one that we've ever had lasted about a year before they started just disintegrating and creating a huge mess. And then you've got all those fibers all over the place that your chickens are trying to eat because they think it's a bug. Yeah, so we stick with the canvas. Like I said, they cost more, but in the long run, I think they're worth it. Sometimes you get what you pay for. Hello, you. Well, I'm glad to see you hanging around here. I don't have a garden yet, but you'll be very welcome in it. So the next thing there is to work on is the doors. I've had a couple questions on how to do the doors. And there's a few different ways you could do it. If these corner braces weren't here, you could make a door that would fit inside this frame. I'm not going to do that for 2 reasons. One, because I do have these here, but also if you stand back and you look at the frame of this door, it is not perfectly square. Building a door to fit inside this would be not impossible, but it would be serious pain. And so instead of that, I'll build a door that will fit this frame but be on the outside of it. That way I can use these to attach the hinges for the door. For the nesting boxes, we have a metal nesting box set. It has, I think, 10 nesting boxes, if I remember correctly. And it's just sitting up there or down there, over there at the homestead in Alabama. And so when I bring the chickens, I'm just going to bring that with me and I'll put it in here. Let me try and move you over here a little bit. It's a little windy. So we'll install the nesting boxes in here. I'm going to build some roosts and then the doors, and then that'll be a complete chicken coop. All right, so I'm going to grab some paper and something to write with, and I'm going to measure the size of this door, and then we'll get started with it. But before I do that, I had a couple people ask me, I'm sorry, I keep looking at the wrong side. I have to look over here. I'm not used to filming with my phone. So I had a couple people ask me about wind and, you know, what we're going to do about that. One of the things that I have planned for this coop is I'm going to reinforce it with some anchors. I'm going to take greenhouse strapping, use some rebar or something like that, dig it down into the ground, attach the greenhouse strapping, go over the top, and attach it to an anchor on the other side. Like I said, most likely some rebar that is pounded down into the ground. And, you know, at our place in Alabama, we would get some pretty strong winds, and we kind of learned where the prevailing winds came from, and it kept that in mind when we built structures. But about a year and a half, maybe 2 years after we moved there, we did have an incident with a cattle panel structure. It wasn't one as heavy as this. It didn't have all of this stuff on it. It was just super simple. The door was made out of PVC, so it was super lightweight, and it was not anchored down at all. Well, we had a massive storm come through with some straight line winds, and the next morning, I was hunting. I was out in my tree stand, and as the sun was coming up, I was looking at the chicken coop or that structure. The only thing that was in there was a rooster. We had a rooster that we had to separate from everybody else, and that's where he was at. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, why does that look like it's not where we put it? Well, that's because it wasn't where we put it. That straight line wind the night before had come through, picked up the chicken coop, moved it about, gosh, I don't remember. I think it was maybe like 40 feet, and dropped it at a perfect right angle from where it was originally. And when I realized what had happened, I'm like, oh, that rooster, that poor rooster must have been terrified. I knew he was all right because I could hear him crowing. But he was definitely taken for a Wizard of Oz ride, that is for sure. All right, so the opening of my door is about 27¼ inches wide. It varies a little bit top to bottom, but that's about what it is. And then from the bottom of my door frame, or from the frame here, to the top of the door opening is 61 5/8. So when I make my door, I want it to be slightly bigger than my opening because it's going to be sitting on the outside. But I don't want to make it too big because I want plenty of the frame to be exposed. That way I can access these boards to attach the hinges and a latch. And you can see there's still a little bit of an opening here above the door. I'll either take some chicken wire, I've got some scraps, and I can fill that in, or I can take just a piece of wood and kind of block that off. So I am going to see if I can do a little bit of a shortcut. There's a couple more old doors here on the property. Well, this one's 24 inches wide. Not wide enough, not wide enough for the chicken coop door. But I got another one. Let's see. I don't know if this one will work. This door's kind of in rough shape. It's 30 inches. It would work. It would cover a lot of the door frame though. I don't know. This door is kind of in really rough condition, so I think we're gonna have to build the door. All right, so this is basically how I'm going to make the frame of the door. There's gonna be 2 vertical pieces. I'm gonna make it 62 inches high, and then there's gonna be 3 going off or going horizontally, top, bottom, and then 1 in the middle. And so even though this is a 2x4, it's actually only 3.5 inches wide. So you have to make that, take that into account when you're figuring out your plans. And so the width of these vertical boards are 3.5 inches. So if I want the whole door to be 30 inches wide, 3.5 and 3.5 off of each end gives me 23. So there'll be 3 pieces 23 inches long, 2 pieces 62 inches long. I will screw those together. I'm going to put in some of these to reinforce the corners, and they don't have to be any particular size. You just need 2 45-degree angles at either end, and they will support they'll support the door and help it stay stable. Say hi, Bean. You get bigger. Oma's going to show you how to use all these tools too. I didn't have enough pieces of 2x4 to do all 3 of the horizontals, so I did the top and the bottom as 2x4, and then rather than cutting into another whole 2x4, I just took some of my scrap wood. I've got lots of scrap wood, and I brought it with me, and so the piece down the center will be 2x3. All right, so I've got the door frame put together for the main door. It's not perfect, but you know, we're not building a house, we're building a chicken coop. So I used some of that plumber's tape again to reinforce the corners. These pieces are screwed in with long screws, 3-inch screws. And then this is the bottom of the door right here, and this is going to be covered with plywood. And then this opening up here, I'm going to cover with some hardware cloth. And so now I'm getting ready to cut the plywood. Now I have a lot of tools, and ideally I would want to use my table saw to cut plywood, sheets of plywood. However, parts of that are packed, don't know where they are yet, and so we're just kind of making do. You know, you just figure it out. It's not a big deal. Don't think you have to do things perfectly in order to be able to do them. No. So I'm going to use my handy dandy old plug-in circular saw to cut this plywood, and I'm going to use my trusty work table that I have used countless times before. It never fails me. And yes, I'm using a ballpoint pen. It draws on wood. First, you got to make sure the wood's not on top of your tailgate. Go. All right, friends, so I've got my door built. As you can see here, I filled in this side with plywood. This is just kind of thin plywood. I forget what thickness this is. It's not a 1/4 of an inch, it's thicker than that. I think maybe it's 5/8 or something like that. So I got plywood down here. So I got plywood here. And then I've got 1/4-inch hardware cloth up on top. I happen to have a scrap that was the perfect size. And so you can see down there where it's all screwed on, stapled the hardware cloth on. And right now I'm getting ready to attach some hinges. I'm going to use 3 of these hinges. They're 3.5-inch hinges. Kind of heavy hinges because the door is kind of heavy, quite honestly. So there'll be 3 of these. I'm going to attach the hinges to the door frame first. And to do that, I'm actually going to take this piece of wood, this little piece of 2x2, and I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to put it right here as though it was the edge of the door. Then I'll use the edge of the wood to help me get all of the hinges in alignment with one another. So I'm just going to tack this on with a couple screws real quick, and then once the hinges are in place, I can put the door on. It comes with these little things right here. And honestly, I usually just throw these in a drawer. And I use my favorite kinds of screws. I like these. The star bit doesn't strip out as easily as these Phillips has, and I just save these in my jar of screws. Now these hinges stick out just a little bit, so that last screw that's closest to this edge, I'm kind of angling it in towards the door. Let's see if this works. All right, friends, so I think the storm is getting ready to roll in. It is starting to get very dark in that sky up there. But it's kind of perfect timing because I just got done with the chicken door. So here is what I built. As I mentioned, I used an old door that was here. So I took 2 pieces of wood that were thinner than a 2x4. I think these are like 1x5s or 1x6s or something like that. Just decking boards. So 2 little scraps that I had, put one on the top and one on the bottom. Put 2x4 in front of those. Then I've got plywood and a handle here. And there you go. Now I will need to put a little latch right here so that this stays closed, but it's the chicken door. So now I'm going to clean up all of my stuff before the rain gets here. All right, friends, so I had one last thing that I wanted to show you, and that is what I found today. So as you saw, I began collecting some of the big rocks for alongside the chicken coop and everything. And I was looking down at the ground and I realized one of those rocks looks a little interesting. So I pulled it out of the dirt and look what I found. I am pretty sure that is a tool of some sort. I don't think it's a spearhead because it doesn't look like it has any way of attaching it to anything, but it feels like it's got almost like a handle right here, like maybe used for scraping and cutting. But check that out. Are you checking it out too? Here, what did Oma find? It's heavy. Oh boy. What is that? She's like, I want it. Oh.
Yeah, we're not gonna break that.